and their participation about individuals with disabilities and participating in the workforce. So once again, good afternoon to everyone that's participating today. So the information that will be presented to you today will be informative in honoring and celebrating National Disability Employment Awareness Month. My team members and I from the Western Wayne District have come together to develop this event to present to others throughout the state of Michigan. And today we have three great presenters who are advocates, who are consultants, and vital team members in the Michigan Rehabilitation Services and in the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. So at this time, before we present to you our first speaker, I would like to also share the spotlight with my team members who have helped develop this event. I'd like to introduce Kristen Blanchard, Fatmi El Ali, and as well as Gretchen Chavis. So now, our first speaker, I'll allow her to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about herself and what she will be presenting today. Mrs. Charlene Organ.
Thank you so much, Blake, for having me, and I appreciate the introduction. My name is Charlene Organ. I am a business relations consultant with Michigan Rehabilitation. I serve in the Grand Rapids area. I am a Caucasian female. I have blondish red hair and a blue shirt and blue eyes. I am going to turn my camera off in order for us to have the interpreter be seen on the screen. So I thank you so much for having us here today. At the Business Network Division, we do provide a lot of business services to the state of Michigan and throughout the nation based on where our employers are located. We do trainings on disability, equity and inclusion, accessibility. We assist with reasonable accommodations. We assist businesses with getting onto the talent acquisition portal. Some of our MRS customers and counselors might know this as TAP. We can help with position descriptions, job descriptions to make sure that our customers are getting placed in positions that they can do with their functional abilities and reasonable accommodations if necessary. We assist with secondary liability insurance for heart, back, seizure, and diabetes. And we have a lot of different retention tools that we can assist businesses with in retaining and maintaining your talent. Today, my focus is going to be talking to you about the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, which is WOTC, how some people say it in the field, because, you know, this is a government organization and we live on acronyms. So if you are an employer on this call and you are just looking for resources in general, maybe it's not disability focused, you can reach out to our Leo employer resource at michigan.gov and get your resources there and get connected to a talent development liaison or somebody from Michigan Rehab or our sister agency, the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the question and answer box and we will answer them after the presentation. So the Work Opportunity Tax Credit it's a federal tax credit incentive to hiring people from individualized target groups for special populations as well that have barriers to employment. And you can receive up to $9,600 in credits. This is a highly underutilized program that is available for businesses, but there are some stipulations and forms to fill out. So I will go over that with you in terms of what the special population is and who they are. It could be qualified veterans. So, veterans who have served in the military, as well as Social Security insurance recipients, people, who are justice involved. The term that they have for WOTC is the ex-felons. But I want to be sensitive, for our customers who may have a criminal background. But a lot of these are terms through the federal government. So long-term TANF, which is temporary assistance for needy families. So people who are receiving cash assistance or short-term disability, which would be SDA TANF recipients, as well as food assistant recipients. So if you're getting food stamps, there are designated community residents, typically in rural areas, and qualified long-term unemployment recipients, as well as Michigan Rehabilitation Services and our sister agency, Bureau Services for Blind Persons. If you cannot tell or see the yellow highlighted, the yellow highlighted is Social Security recipients, the long-term and short-term TANF, as well as food assistance and Michigan Rehab. They are all those highlighted ones are government connected. So if you are an employer and you're asking a person to identify and provide documentation that they receive and they are part of this special population, the ones that I just relisted again, they do not need to provide documentation because of the connection to the federal government, to the state system. They would have that documentation already when they submit it. For the qualified veterans, you would need to have a DD 214. For justice involved, your exit, iChat, and for community residents, you would need to provide documentation, tax form, your tax form could do it, as well as your voter registration, and then your unemployment. So a lot of the organizations for our special populations are already connected. So just to have a better understanding of who the special populations are. And it is based on how long you hire this person. So once you get this person hired, within that first hiring week, make sure that you fill out the correct forms. I'll show those here shortly. But after 1 year, you can, for a disabled vet, you can get 3,000 to 480,000, and after 2 years, $12,000. So these are all work tax credits that you can get. So the veterans, it's for disabled veterans as well as unemployed. And then it breaks down how much money. So at the beginning, you might have heard I said, $9,600 of tax credits. It does go beyond that based on which special population you're targeting, and it's based on the hours that that individual works. So in order for you to, as a business, apply for WOTC, there's 3 easy steps. If you have a MyWAM account through michigan.gov, which is the unemployment. Unemployment is actually the organization that runs the WOTC program. But you complete the IRS form, which is the 8850. Again, we're a government organization, so we like our form numbers and our acronyms. Once that's completed, then you submit that information. For veterans, there is a special form that they can get filled out, where you attach the DD 214 and information is there for it to all be submitted. There are some people who are not eligible though for the business aspect. So if you own the business and you're applying for a tax credit for yourself, so a veteran owned business, and you're applying for WOTC on yourself, that's not allowed. Like you can't You can't get WOTC, you can't get tax credits for hiring yourself, right? Or your relative in that reference, or rehire. So you can't let go of a person, get those WOTC tax credits, and then let them go and then hire them back on and get those tax credit again. That's not allowed. Probably rightfully so, but some people have tried, I guess, some businesses. So if you have more questions about WOTC, you can get them answered through the UIA website. And I also put the phone number on here. It's the 1-800-482-2959 for the work opportunity tax credit information. It is underutilized. The program itself and the unit within UIA is very small. So hopefully we can help that grow and utilize these incentives to get people hired and to help our small businesses grow. So if you have any questions outside of that, please feel free to reach me. Here is my phone number. It's 616-240-1993. And my email is organs1@michigan.gov. I appreciate and thank you for your time. I tried to explain most of the slides for our BSVP sister agency, as well as giving a definition of what I look like and who I am, to be accessible for all, because that is what our goal here is at Michigan Rehabilitation Services. So we thank you for joining my presentation portion, and I will turn it over to Keisha.
Thank you, Charlene. Hi, my name is Keisha Hall Delegard. I am a business relation consultant with Michigan Rehabilitation Services Business Network Division. I cover everything in Wayne County but Detroit. And I have the opportunity to present to you on reasonable accommodations. I am going to share my screen here. Let's see. I hope that was successful.
We can see it.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I can't see you guys. What happened to you? Okay, it doesn't matter. Should I turn off my video?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's get started. What I will say is I have been charged with providing a lot of information, so I might go a little fast to make sure I am providing enough content so you can get a good understanding about what's being presented today. So, there is a disclaimer. As an ADA trainer covering ADA national information, I am required to read this disclaimer out loud. Information, materials, and other technical assistance are intended solely as informational guidance and are neither a determination of your legal rights or responsibilities under the ADA, nor binding on any agency with enforcement responsibilities under the ADA. The Northeast ADA Center is authorized by the National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research, known as NIDRR, to provide information materials and technical assistance to individuals and entities that are covered by the ADA. The content of this document were developed under a grant from the Department of Education, NIDRR grant number, you see it there, H133A110020. However, these contents do not necessarily represent the policy of the Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government. Okay, great. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to review the definition of reasonable accommodations, where I want to acquaint the participants of the interactive communication process, review possible reasonable accommodation options, and also review resources. There are 10 things I want to discuss with you today. So I will do my best to cover these in its entirety, okay? So let's get started. What is a reasonable accommodation? So what I will say, most employers are already doing accommodations. Some of them are formal and some are informal. Informal accommodations do not protect the employee nor the employer. So this is why making sure that you have a formal, reasonable accommodation process is important. So what is a reasonable accommodation? It is any change in the work environment or in the way things are customarily done that enables an individual with a disability to enjoy equal employment opportunities. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but also keep in mind that this definition was not just made up. The definition was put in place by the EEOC. So this is the standard definition of what a reasonable accommodation is. So what are some examples of a reasonable accommodation? Some examples could be, excuse me, auxiliary aids and services for employees with visual impairments. Sorry. So it's important too with assistive technology where the barriers could come in. Some of these barriers could come in because the assistive technology does not fit within the infrastructure of a business. Because now with technology, we have access to many different things on our phone, on our computer. But when we're at work and we want to access these things, sometimes it is not compatible with the infrastructure. So that's where the reasonable accommodation come in, is making sure these individuals have access to these technologies while at work. Other auxiliary aids and services such as interpreters and/or captioning are potential reasonable accommodations for employers who are deaf or hard of hearing. Change in schedule might include allowing someone to leave early a couple of days a week for medical appointments. Changes in break times might allow an individual to take breaks according to medication schedule or to plan rest periods according to the doctor's orders. Job aids are tools that help an employee by directing, guiding, or improving the efficiency of their works. Examples can include sticky notes. I have them all over my workstation. Um, Instruction sheets, online help. Sometimes posters can be of assistance as well. Smartphone features, you heard me make reference to that earlier. Even if the employer does not have a work from home policy, they would need to consider the possibility of allowing an individual to work from home as an accommodation if the employee needs it. The other thing we see on the screen here is reassignment and leave. I'm going to talk more in detail about that in the next coming slides. The third thing I want to talk to you about is how much does it cost? Studies have shown that accommodations across the board, the cost is pretty minimal, if anything at all. So if there is usually a cost, the cost is an average of $100 or less. So, studies have also indicated, and you can see Jan on the screen here as a resource regarding some of the information that I'm talking to you about. But according to some studies that have been put into place, the cost of accommodations have been decreasing. Not quite sure why, but I'm thinking it's one, education. More people are being educated about accommodations, meaning that they're getting more familiar about how to provide accommodations that just does not cost a lot of money. Two, I believe technology is a cause of that as well. But the other thing you've heard You heard my colleague Charlene talk about those tax incentives that are available to employers that can also offset some of the costs that may be associated with some reasonable accommodations. The fourth thing I want to talk to you about is who can get an accommodation. So, qualified individuals who meet the ADA definition of disability, meaning that they have a physical or a mental impairment that impacts their ability to walk, see, all their daily life activities. So that those individuals would fall under the ADA. So qualified individuals, they have the skills, they have the experience, the education to do the essential functions of the job, but they need an accommodation to ensure that they're able to do the essential functions of the job. So please make sure that when we're talking about qualified candidates, we are talking about those candidates who are qualified to do the essential functions of the job. The fifth thing that I want to cover with you very quickly, I know that I'm running through it. How is the accommodation process triggered? I want to spend a little time here because the employee and also the employer are sometimes not sure when that accommodation process is triggered. The process can start by a worker saying, I'm having trouble performing my job because of a medical condition or a disability. Also, it can be third party. What if it's a supervisor or a manager that's saying, hey, I have an employee that's saying they're having a difficult time with their work, and I'm not quite sure what can be done. Now, it does not have to be that way either. It can be an employee just making plain language. I'm having a hard time. I don't know what's going on. Then someone can say, have you had this problem before? What have you done in the past? Um, Also, the manager or supervisor can say, hey, I'm not quite sure how to help you, but let's connect you to HR and maybe you can have a conversation with them. An employer can have a formal accommodation process, which should be the only process you have. Because, as I said before, an informal accommodation process can put the employee at risk and can put the employer at risk. When you have a formal accommodation process, that means everyone is going through the same process, the same questions are being asked, and the same outcomes, successful outcomes will happen. Also, um, it is recommended that the employer respond to an accommodation within a timely manner, whether that be a week, 2 weeks, but responding in a timely manner. What I will say is that sometimes employers do not respond within a timely manner is they have no idea what to do. Sometimes the employee, they don't know what to do. But what I will say is that MRS Business Network Division is in place to assist with consultation through these processes. Even if you don't have a clue, we can work through the process with you. We are not an agency that says, spank your hand. We're not the ADA police. We're here to assist. Let's talk about, can accommodation requests be denied? Once again, this is done on a case-by-case situation. Remember, the definition must be significant expense. No set dollar amount applied to all businesses. Employers do not have to provide an accommodation if it is unduly expense, substantial, or disruptive to those that would fundamentally alter the nature or operation of the business. So please keep that in mind. You do not have to provide an accommodation that you can't pay for, that substantially disrupt your operation and your business, or it fundamentally alters the way that you do business. How is an accommodation decided upon? So there's no science to it. As I talked about the interactive process, keep that in mind. It is a collaborative conversation. What's needed? What do I need to do? And also keep in mind that we're going to talk about medical documentation in just a moment, but making sure the lines of communication through each step of the process is lines of communication is open. Can medical documentation be collected? Absolutely. The only caveat that I will say here is make sure that medical documentation is being collected, one, through a formal process, two, that is being collected related to the medical condition that need to be accommodated. You know, if you're like me, maybe you have a couple of different diagnoses, but maybe you have diabetes, and diabetes is what's preventing you from completing the essential functions of your job. If that is the case, only medical documentation that need to be provided is that information related to diabetes. So also make sure that all medical information that is collected regarding the accommodation process is kept confidential and separate from the employee's work file. Another thing regarding medical documentation is who else can be told. All medical documentation should be kept confidential. Only coworkers who are directly impacted by the accommodation can be told that there will be a change, but you do not need to tell them that someone is receiving an accommodation, but you can say, communicate that the change is being provided according to a law without saying which law, and as it would be any other qualified individual. Now, we know that when this happens, individual employees will say, well, I want a new chair. I want to be able to leave for breaks early and come in late. You can simply just inform that employee if you are having problems completing the essential functions of your job, you need to go talk to HR or whoever the person is that's assigned to deal with reasonable accommodations. You do not need to reveal what accommodations and why they are being provided. Okay, how can we make it work? Let's wrap this up. Let's just do everything in good faith. Find an accommodation that works. One of the things I will say is that oftentimes we try accommodations and the first time it may not work. So making sure that we are always revisiting, is the accommodation working? Is it working for the employee? Also, is it working for the business? Making sure that everyone that's a part of the accommodation process, they are in on what's taking place next. Now, let's say an individual has been accommodated several times and it has come to a final decision that it's just impossible to accommodate this individual within this particular job. Then that's where you can look at leave or reassignment. Looking at reassignment is a great accommodation, a reasonable accommodation. If an employer can accommodate the individual for a reassignment into another job, that's great. I've also seen business to business networking. If the business is not able to reassign the individual within the same employer, I have seen other businesses network with businesses to reassign the individual to another business that may have an open position. Keep in mind, if you have a great employee and you want to retain them within the industry, within the field, this is a great opportunity to do that. And just making sure that everyone on all ends have trust. I know that we will be hosting questions at the end. But what I will say, I want to share these resources on the screen with you. Excuse me, you heard me talk about EEOC. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That is a great resource for employers and also for employees. Job Accommodation Network is also another great resource, and also the Department of Education. Once again, my name is Keisha Hall Dilligard, and here's my contact information. If you have any questions, I know I went through this really quick, but please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present. And I believe that I'm turning it over to Cassandra Wolf.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much, Keisha. That was a great presentation. My name is Cassandra Wolf, and I am a rehabilitation consultant in the Innovation Unit at Michigan Rehabilitation Services. Today, I'll be speaking to you about our supported employment and customized employment services, and how those services in particular can really enhance collaboration with businesses as well as customer outcomes in employment. So I'll turn off my camera here and then share my screen. Let's see, there we go. Is that showing up for you? Oh, let's see.
Yes, it's showing.
Okay. Somehow I've still got the notes on there though, so I'm not sure why that is. Okay, there we go. So I really wanted to connect with our Michigan Rehabilitation Services mission and vision, because I felt that while all of our services at MRS are able to speak to that, I think in particular, customized employment and supported employment really do touch on those points. So our mission is to develop customized workforce solutions. Excuse me, I apologize. I use a screen magnifier and it doesn't seem to be working as well as it was when we were practicing. Okay.
Cassandra, did you want to share it with me, or do you want me to run the screen deck for you?
That might be a good idea, although I think I did send it over to Blake. I apologize.
No, that's fine. We were having these issues yesterday. So Blake, if you could present, if you got the presentation yesterday, could you share it?
Pull it up. Yeah, that'd be great. And then I will stop sharing.
Okay, give me just a moment to put it up.
Thank you. Sorry, everyone.
Now, this is our world of technology. We're all used to it. We always have difficulties. But we're a team and we work together. That's what we do here at MRS. So thank you for your patience, everybody.
Blake, is it loading for you?
All right, please let me know if you can see my screen.
No.
Let's see, here we go.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, do you see it? Okay, sorry about that.
Yes.
All
Yep.
right, here we go.
Great. Would you be able to go to the next slide then, Blake?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
And I'll try to move the screen. Go ahead.
Great. Looks like we're still on the first slide.
Blake, do you have it in presentation mode?
I don't think I do.
So go ahead and hit slideshow. Excuse me.
Is this better?
When you hit slideshow, which screen do you see it on? Because you may have to stop sharing and share again.
Okay, yeah, I do have it in presentation mode now.
Okay, it
Can the
didn't
audience
change.
see it?
No, it
Okay,
didn't.
let me stop sharing and share again.
Mm-mm. Okay, try slideshow mode and see if it changed. From the beginning, yeah.
There we go.
Is this
Yeah.
better?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you so much.
All right. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Yep. So if you could just go back to that slide, the slide with the Capitol building on it. Yes. So again, I want to just speak to the way that I specifically think that supported employment and customized employment speak to our mission at MRS as well as our vision. So I've highlighted here parts of the mission and vision. I've added emphasis that I think are most important to the work of supported and customized employment. The mission to develop customized workforce solutions for businesses and individuals with disabilities. And our vision is a diverse and inclusive workforce that unites businesses and individuals with disabilities towards a common goal. And I think you'll see, hopefully by the end of my presentation, how supported employment, but specifically customized employment, really works to bring that whole business need and individual need together towards the common goal. Next slide, please. So I'll first speak to supported employment. All of these definitions that I'll be sharing with you today come directly from our Michigan Rehabilitation Services policy, which is derived from the federal regulations. So supported employment services is competitive integrated employment, including customized employment, for those individuals with the most significant disabilities. Next slide, please. Who, because of the nature and severity of their disabilities, need, number one, support services during their time of employment while they're working with MRS. And number two, follow along services with an extended service provider. And that extended service provider is someone else, another agency, another individual, perhaps the business besides Michigan Rehabilitation Services. So supported employment is particular in the service delivery because of those extended support services. And these are services that are going to assist that individual in keeping that job. They're specified in the individual's plan for employment, and they can be provided by a state agency that is not MRS, a nonprofit organization, the employer, or any other appropriate resource that is identified throughout the vocational rehabilitation process. And again, these services can range from anything that's already been provided through MRS, such as job coaching or job development, social skills training, but they're going to support that individual after they've closed their case. And in the case of youth, we have a lot of different caveats. So I just did note here, I won't get into it today, but in the case of youth, MRS can continue to provide those extended services up to 4 years or until that youth turns 25 if another support is not available. Next slide, please. So someone who would be appropriate for our supported employment services is someone for whom they've not been able to achieve that competitive integrated employment. Maybe they've never been able to achieve it because they didn't have appropriate accommodations in the past, or maybe they were struggling with different barriers of their disabilities that just made it really challenging for them to even begin to apply for a job. It's also appropriate for someone for whom employment has been interrupted because of a disability, or maybe really intermittent or sporadic. Maybe they've only worked a few months at a time because of being unable to manage certain aspects of their diagnosis. Someone who would be receiving our supported employment services would need those services intensely throughout the MRS process, and then also require extended services by another provider, like a business or an employer or friend or family member, once that case is closed out. And again, from our priority perspective, that individual would have to meet the MRS criteria for most significantly disabled. Next slide, please. So when someone is receiving MRS supported employment services, we mandate that at least they are connecting with their counselor and their employer twice monthly, either on the work site or off the work site. So this can happen a number of ways. It really depends on how involved the counselor or the job coach is getting in connecting with that business where that employee is working. I think the preferred site is that the customer would be on the work site and meeting with either their MRS counselor or job coach to see how things are going, because that really strengthens the relationship between MRS or the job coach and that employer to really help facilitate those extended services once the case is closed. But if the customer and employee prefers something different, those can be negotiated. So other intensive support services that would begin during the MRS case and could continue as extended services could be social skills training, job development and training, job coaching, regular supervision, regular follow-up with employer, and notably facilitation of natural supports. Next slide, please. So one of the things we think about a lot when it comes to supported employment is really considering what does it mean to look at those natural supports. Often we at MRS believe that, we may automatically think as counselors, we have to pay for someone to provide these services as extended services to make sure that this employee is going to be is going to stay stable on their job. But really, supported employment in the legislation and in our policy offers opportunity to really facilitate those natural supports between friends and family, getting to know the employer or other coworkers at the business site, or even kind of looping in therapy or any other agencies with whom the individual is connected. Ultimately, any supports, but especially natural supports, should be ones that the MRS staff and the employee or customer are working on to build those strong relationships and partnerships. So for when they close their case and leave our services, they're able to continue to thrive in their employment. Next slide, please. Actually, this is a repeat, so we'll go to the next slide. And then this is another repeat too, so I apologize for that. So supported employment really is based on the current job market, looking for jobs that are already available and helping that customer make those connections long-term and building those supports so that they can keep the job after they're working with us. Customized employment, while is still considered a component of supported employment, is different in its approach. So customized employment is a federally mandated service that is defined as competitive integrated employment for an individual with a significant or most significant disability. So the difference there is, while supported employment is specifically for those who are really the most significant, have the most significant barriers, the federal government has decided that customized employment can actually be available for those who still certainly need VR services and certainly have a significant number of barriers, but don't have to meet the highest threshold. And it's customized employment is unique in that it's based on unique strengths, needs, and interests of that employment seeker. What you don't see here in this definition is capabilities or abilities. We're really focusing individually on what's possible for this person. What do they need to be successful in the work environment? And how can we, as their VR counselor and their community partners, come alongside them to help them find a job that works best for them? Customized employment is very unique because it's designed to meet what the individual needs for their workplace and what the business needs. So customized employment is very intentional in getting to know business needs as well as individual employment seeker needs to determine, okay, what's going to be the best job. Customized employment is carried out through flexible and intensive strategies. Initially, it begins in the home environment and the community environment, working with an individual's personal and professional contacts, getting to know family and friends, getting to know, what do you like to do in the home? Do you like to cook? What are some interests that you have just in your life? And how can we leverage those interests to find a job theme that would be appropriate for you? And then it comes to connecting with employers in the community and not looking at the jobs they've already posted and not relying on current labor market trends, but really meeting an individual employer with that individual customer and employment seeker to say, what are your business needs that maybe you haven't thought of? And can we create a job description that this individual who has skills and interests can meet? Other examples of these flexible strategies can be, creating an alternative work schedule, different job arrangements, very specific supervision categories, and like different job locations. Customized employment, again, is always going to be based on intense relationship building between businesses and between the job seeker. Which is why it's a service that can take a pretty long time, because we're really making sure that each individual is getting their maximum potential met and each business is getting their maximum potential met as well. Next slide, please. So who can benefit from customized employment? You'll see that there are similarities here between those who benefit from customized employment and supported employment, but there are some significant differences as well. So customized employment is ideal for someone for whom competitive integrated employment has not historically occurred, even with supported employment services. So maybe someone's been through MRS before and they've tried supported employment and it just didn't work for them. If they come back to us, customized employment should be something that we consider as an option for them. So also someone who's unable to sustain that competitive integrated employment without those long-term supports, and someone whose experiences have primarily been in segregated facility-based programs, sheltered workshops, or sub-minimum wage positions. So as the conversation is moving, like nationally towards how are we going to think about sheltered workshops? Where will individuals go for employment outcomes if these workshops close? And customized employment, I think, can be a great answer for that as a service. It's an opportunity to really give people a chance at work that haven't historically had it before. And additionally, customized employment is appropriate for someone who's not had the opportunity to work due to low expectations of their abilities and capabilities. Next slide, please. Again, I just really want to emphasize the defining features of customized employment, because it can seem, once you get into it, it can seem a little different than the way we've traditionally thought of job placement services. So first and foremost, customized employment empowers the choice of the individual. It is very person-centered, and it is very based on what do you want and what do you think is possible, rather than any kind of assessment or negative evaluation of a person's abilities. Customized employment cuts through all that and focuses on the customer's strengths. Discovery and customized job development are key services of customized employment. And that discovery phase is really getting to know that customer in their community, getting to know their neighbors, getting to know businesses in the area, and really figuring out what does job development look like. Customized employment relies on a customized, negotiated job that meets both the employer's needs and meets the preferences and the needs of the job seeker. Both of those components have to be in place for customized employment to be successful and for a job placement to be considered customized. It's an individualized job description, not something that you would find on Indeed, not something that you would find on someone's website. It is written specifically for that individual. And it optimizes the job retention of the individual with a disability, because that individual is always first and foremost the focus, as well as the business needs. So when we're able to braid those two things together, it can really result in that successful collaboration between the business and the individual. And then lastly, it results in at least a minimum wage or similar wages and benefits as coworkers. And that's very similar to supported employment as well. Next slide, please. So currently, Michigan Rehab Services does not deliver statewide services for customized employment, but we have been in a pilot for the last 5 years. And I'd like to share with you briefly what we've learned and where we're going. So we partnered with our sister agency, the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons, to really look at delivering customized employment to those individuals for maybe who haven't been able to have these opportunities to work before. As of today, we have approximately 60 participants from both BSBP and MRS have been served in the customized employment pilot. Currently, less than half of those cases have closed out successfully. And while that sounds pretty negative, it's very on par with national statistics. And I think, as we go into the reasons why those numbers aren't as high in the next slide. So,
excuse me, Cassandra, this is
yes.
just a simple reminder that we still have 1 more minute to wrap up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So one of the concerns we had was a lot of the concerns of, where do we go with customized employment is the success is challenging because the length of service delivery seems to differ so much from our traditional VR model. Because of that, we're teaching vendors how to deliver this service because it is very different than traditional job placement. And it's a very intense model with intense metrics that vendors and staff have to meet. And so we are moving forward. We're learning from our hardships of the pilot because we do believe in this service moving forward. Next slide. So we are moving forward and we're hoping to expand customized employment as a statewide service in 2025. And we've been doing that through having stakeholder meetings of those who've previously been involved in the pilot and having conversations with our policy unit, our training unit, and the Bureau of Services to Blind Persons to ensure that these services are going to be accessible to vendors, accessible to counselors, and most importantly, accessible to those who need them. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, I know I rushed through that last bit very quickly. Both customized and supported employment are essential services within the vocational rehabilitation framework because they enhance employment outcomes for those who are most impacted by disability barriers. And I would state that I believe that these services embolden individuals and strengthen the workforce. And they really are the heart of how we can partner with VR and businesses and really help our customers to achieve their success in employment. So thank you for your time.
Thank you to all our presenters today. We really appreciate it. I'm going to go over some of the questions that we had in the Q&A here. Our first question is customized employment something that MRS can pay for? And is that similar to on-the-job training?
That's a great question. So yes, eventually it will be something that MRS will pay for. We only have it in 6 pilot sites right now, but we will be taking it statewide next year. I guess there are similarities to on-the-job training, especially when you get further along in the customized employment process. But I think the main difference is that customized employment really is going to be individualized with each case. So whatever rules and thoughts you have about on-the-job training, you may have to kind of throw them out the window because customized employment is a very specific model for how to engage an employee.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Keisha, this one is good for you. When requesting a training accommodation for work, should I request before or after I get a job offer?
So what I would suggest is if there is training that needs to take place, first find out what accommodations that you need, because some employers are really accommodating. They have universal design, so that may mean that you may not need to request an accommodation and go through that process. So my suggestion is to figure out what is already available that will assist you before making a request.
Okay. All right. And then if I am a vendor and I want to request a training for my company, my HR staff, what is the process to do that?
This is for me.
Yes.
Okay. Please, depending on the type of training, please make sure that you reach out to either myself or Charlene, and we can make sure that we're connecting you to the appropriate person. If it is something that is outside of our wheelhouse, we will connect you to, if we have those relationships, to those individual organizations that can assist with the training that you are asking for.
Okay, great. All right. Well, that is everything that we wanted to cover today. Thank you again, all of you, for presenting, and everybody for participating and logging on today. We hope that this was very helpful. And again, reach out to all of the contacts that are on the call today if you have any further questions. So we will see you all again soon. Thank you so much. Have a good one.